Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. Today we're going to be taking a look at this beast here, the T110E4 American turreted Tier 10 tank destroyer. I have really enjoyed going down the American turreted tank destroyer line. There are some machines in there which are definitely not to everybody's tastes. Machines like the T28-2, which is not that good a machine, and yet I did manage to do consistently well in it. The T28 Prototype, another example. It's not the most versatile of machines in the world. Where is it? There it is. It's really, really slow, but fully upgraded. That is a monstrously good gun. And I have had a lot of success in the T28 Prototype, the T30. While that gun can be immensely frustrating, I have had some absolute monster games in the T30. I think this is a great, if frustrating, machine, and I do not for a second regret getting it. The T110E4, on the other hand, bit of a mixed bag. Now I have to state right here at the beginning that I am obviously coming to the T110E4 relatively late on in the game. This is my first Tier 10 tank destroyer, and it has been repeatedly nerfed since it was introduced in patch 7.5. I understand that it used to be a very, very, very good machine. Of course, I'm not reviewing what it used to be, I'm reviewing what it is right now, and right now, this to me is one of those machines that is neither one thing nor the other. It is not a particularly well-armoured tank destroyer, it is not a particularly quick tank destroyer, it is not a particularly stealthy tank destroyer. The gun does not do a particularly large amount of damage, it is not particularly accurate, it does have very good penetration, and that is about the best thing that you can say about it. It's a machine that's just a collection of averages. It is not outstanding in any one feature in a way that you could say about any of the other Tier 10 tank destroyers. This is a distinctly average machine. Well, that's not strictly 100% true. The one distinguishing feature of the T110E4 is that, like the T30 before it, this thing has a turret. Sort of. Unlike the T30, which has a turret that rotates all the way around and is monstrously well armoured at the front, the T110E4 has a turret that only rotates 180 degrees, so here and here, but it won't go all the way around to the back. Still, you know, that's not really something to complain about, because it does have a turret that rotates 180 degrees more than almost all of the other Tier 10 tank destroyers. Unfortunately, unlike the T30, the armour on the turret of this thing is garbage. It is just not adequate. 203mm of frontal turret armour at Tier 10 is not good enough. And that's why I say this machine is just a collection of averages. When engineers are designing a real tank, they have a competing set of requirements that they have to balance against each other, and those are firepower, armour, and mobility. For firepower, obviously, you need a big, powerful gun. Now, the size of the gun that you're going to mount on the tank dictates the size of the turret ring, which in turn dictates the size of the hull. You start off with a tank with a big hull, you need a powerful engine. Then you start putting armour on it. That increases the weight, which means you need an even more powerful engine if you want to maintain the same mobility. Increasing the weight increases the stress and strain on the suspension and the transmission, and so on and so on and so on. And so it's very easy to get carried away when you start designing the tank by adding more stuff to it until you end up with something that is just ridiculously expensive and completely impractical. And I do feel that the T110E4 is a perfect example of something that was designed by a committee that just did not get the balance right. It has armour, but it has nowhere near enough armour to be adequate for a Tier 10 machine. And if you're going to have inadequate armour on a machine, then you may as well just have no armour whatsoever and at least make it fast or stealthy. Something that the T110E4 definitely isn't. Another thing that the T110E4 does not have, and that is good DPM, damage per minute. It has a damage per minute of 2,308. That's only marginally better than the T30's 2,143. It's significantly worse than the Tier 9 T95, 2,459. It's actually worse than the Tier 8 T28 Prototype, 2,376. significantly worse than the Tier 8 T28 with 2,637. Hell, it's not that much better than the Tier 7 T25AT, which has 2,110 damage per minute. But is it fair to compare the T110E4 to other American tank destroyers? Well, let's just compare it to the other Tier 10 tank destroyers. Object 268, 2,727 DPM. The Object 263, 3,000 DPM. The T110E3, 2,647. The Death Star, 2,300. Fantastic. It has marginally better DPM than a tank destroyer which can one-shot almost every tank in the game. No comparison. How about the Germans? Well, we do have the Waffenträger E100, which can fire a burst from its clip which will kill almost any tank in the game and still has better damage per minute of 2,880. What about the Jagdpanzer E100? I mean, that's got a really, really big gun. Surely it will have better DPM than the... No, it doesn't even have better DPM than the Jagdpanzer E100, which does over 1,000 damage per shot and has effective armour. It does, however, have better DPM than the Foch 155. Marginally better DPM, but the Foch 155 is an autoloader. It's not about the damage per minute. It's about the burst damage. It's about killing just about everything in front of you in the 10 seconds it takes you to fire all 3 shots. It just does not stack up to the opposition. There is nothing special about this machine other than the fact that it has a turret. In fact, we'll go one further. We're going to compare the T110E4's gun not to the gun on the T110E3 or the Waffenträger E100 or the Jagdpanzer E100, not even to the T95 and the T30. We're going to compare the gun on the T110E4 to the gun on the ISU-152, the BL10. You get this at Tier 8. The BL10 actually has a better rate of fire, even at Tier 8, than the gun on the T110E4. And the gun on the T110E4, while it had its alpha damage dropped from 850 to 750, actually had its rate of fire buffed, and it's still not as good as a Tier 8 tank destroyer. The penetration is very, very good on the T110E4's gun, 295mm. But it's not that much better than the 286mm of the BL10. They both have exactly the same alpha damage. The accuracy is better, 0.41 versus 0.37, but 0.37 still isn't very good. The aiming time is better, 0.34 on the BL10 versus 2.9 on the T110E4, but 2.9 is still pretty bad. And when the gun on your Tier 10 tank destroyer does not compare favourably against the gun on a Tier 8 tank destroyer for DPM or alpha damage, then there is a serious problem with your Tier 10 tank destroyer. And yet, none of this really means it's a bad machine. There are plenty of examples of tanks in World of Tanks that just do not look like they should work. The T25-2 is a perfect example. I despise that machine. I hated every second I spent driving it, and yet it is one of the machines that I have the best stats in. I do not understand why it shouldn't work, but it does. Can we say the same thing about the T110E4? Let's have a look. So let's get the bad stuff out of the way right at the start, and then we can concentrate on the positives. This is not a very tall machine, which means that you can't really shoot over obstacles like this small rise in the ground, and you have to drive over the top in order to try pointing the gun at targets on the other side, which obviously exposes your tank. Combine that with the terrible 6 degrees of gun depression means that even if you do come over the rise in order to engage a vehicle on the other side, there's still no guarantee that even at point blank range you're going to be able to point the gun at the target. The gun depression on this machine is bad. But just having a lousy 6 degrees of gun depression is not in and of itself something that makes a machine bad. There are plenty of machines in World of Tanks that have that kind of crappy gun depression, and people still do well in those machines. Another minor factor that might catch you out when you first start driving the T110E4 is that the shell travels with a slower velocity than you're used to with the T30, which means you have to lead your target more. But the single biggest thing that is going to make you wish you were driving a T30 rather than the T110E4 is the shitty turret front armour and the terrible gun mantlet. That right there. Unsurprisingly, it was a high explosive anti-tank round that went through the gun mantlet, fired from the T110E5. That's the smaller hole. But right underneath the gun, not premium ammunition, that's a BL-10 shot from the Object 704, which went right through the thickest armour on the tank as if it was butter. It's fairly safe to say I had a very, very frustrating experience when I first started using the T110E4. There were machines where you queue it up for a battle and you just think, I'm going to have fun. The TOG-2 for me is my party tank. I know when I play the TOG-2, I'm almost always going to have fun. I might not be especially effective, I might not do especially well, but I'm probably going to have fun. I know when I queue up my Centurion 7.1 that I'm probably going to do a lot of damage and have a good game. When I queue up the T110E4, the best thing I'm thinking is usually, meh. And yet, I have had good games in this machine. In that respect, it's a lot like my T25 too. And that's an example that I keep using because it's entirely appropriate to the T110E4. On paper, the stats of both machines are completely unspectacular, and yet the T25-2 is one of the machines in World of Tanks that for some reason that I just cannot figure out, I have managed to do quite spectacularly well in, even though I detested every second of driving that heap of junk. My stats in it are undeniably good. Now, I'm under a lot of pressure to perform in this match. Not only is it a live stream match, as most of my games are, but I'm platooned up with Circumflexes and Sir Foch. Sir Foch is a very, very good player, and he is also driving a T110E4. The difference between me and Foch is that he's played a lot more games in the T110E4 than I have. He's also a significantly better player, and while he agrees with me that the T110E4 is not an especially good machine, he actually likes driving his T110E4. Circumflexes, the third member of our platoon, well, he's in the Death Star, the mighty British FV215B, with the 183mm Doom cannon. Like most 215B 183 drivers, he of course will have a very healthy stock of premium high explosive squash head ammunition, and that's one thing that you can say about the E4. You do not need to use premium ammunition with this thing. Standard armor piercing on this thing has 295mm of penetration. It is very, very good. The problem is of course hitting the target. 0.37 accuracy, well, it's not terrible, but it's not very good either. Good enough to get through the side of an IS-8 though. And the spaced armour and tracks on the side of tanks like the IS-8 is infamous for eating up shots from high explosive squash head and high explosive anti-tank premium ammunition. That is not a problem that you're likely to suffer when you're firing shots from the 155mm gun using the standard armour piercing ammo on the E4. But anyway, back to the game. There's an AMX 5120 over there. I've got an M103 with me, and I can attempt to use the wreck of that IS-8 to cover myself up. Unfortunately, the lack of height of the T110E5 makes that impractical, and the 5120 starts unloading into me. His first shot takes my tracks off and penetrates the side. He then adjusts his fire and starts going for the front of the hull, which bounces. He then switches his fire back into the side and keeps penetrating. You'll notice I was waggling the turret from side to side. I was expecting the guy to realise all he has to do if he wants to kill me is plant shots right through the front of the turret. And so what I was trying to do, in the same way that you'll see E100 drivers don't present the flat front of your turret to an enemy gun unless you're ready to shoot them. The only difference in the E4 is that it usually doesn't work, because the base thickness of the armour just isn't up to scratch. But sometimes it does, so it's always worth trying. Now there's an Object 704 around that corner and some crates in the way, but with 295mm of penetration the crates should not make any difference. And I kind of faff around a bit here, not quite sure which way I'm going to go, and then I make my mind up to go for the object, and I screw this up. I don't even know where that shot went. I managed to pull back enough that the object can only put fire into my outside road wheel, which takes the tracks off but doesn't actually do any damage. But that shot was my own fault. The E4, like the T30 before it, is one of those machines where you absolutely, definitely, 100% have to aim your shots. If you don't, it will just miss. Sometimes it's going to miss even if you do fully aim. I have taken shots in this machine from a range of no more than 25 meters at the flat side of E100s, and it's still missed. It's one of those machines. Unfortunately, getting detracked crossing the road cost me time, which meant that I was only able to hit that T54 for 254 damage, even though it was an ammo rack, which seems like a bit of a waste, but it was a calculated risk. I was aware that there was an enemy tank at the bottom end of that road, and if he was reloaded, there is absolutely no reason why he would not put a shot into the side of my E4 as I crossed the road. He did. He blew my tracks off. It cost me the time that I needed to get around and do some early damage to the T54. I took a gamble. It didn't pay off. Meanwhile, we've got a potential brothers in arms here. Me and Fosh just need to get one more kill each. Circumflexes is on 3. Fosh and I are on 2 each. And there's 2 big fat juicy targets down there. E100, who is not such a fat and juicy target anymore, but the E75 is. And for once I get a bit of luck. Didn't fully aim that shot, but I didn't want somebody else to get the shot off before me. 2.9 seconds aiming time is a long time, so I took the chance, and for once I got away with it. So there's my 3rd kill. Circumflexes on 3 kills, I'm on 3 kills. Fosh gets 1 more. We've got brothers in arms in the bag. So what have they got left? T62A, T110E4. Looking at the relative positions of the 2 enemy tanks, or the last known positions, we're probably not going to get shots on the T62A. The T110E5, on the other hand, if we can just get close enough, well, we've got a chance. Now, this is definitely not what the E4 is good at, long-range sniping. 0.37 accuracy, it's not a sniper. And yet, the ISU-152 is not a sniper. The KV-2 is not a sniper. And you pull off shots like this in those machines all the time. It's World of Tanks. Anything can happen. Now, this is where it gets tricky. That guy now has 709 health. I just hit him for less than 709 damage. So even if Fosh hits this guy and he just missed him, there is no guarantee he's going to do enough damage to kill him. To make matters worse, the E5 is not... Okay, now we can one-shot kill him, but all you can actually see of the E5 is what is above the embankment and below the railway carriage he's hiding behind. And that's the E4's gun for you. 1 minute you couldn't hit the side of an E100 from 25 meters, the next you're nailing at a T110E5 from 623 meters when he's hiding behind a railway carriage. It's just that kind of gun. Anyway, final replay of the video. This time I'm platooned with Quickie Baby and Ike. Quickie Baby is in his Foch 155. Very, very dangerous Tier 10 tank destroyer. Ike is in his always reliable T110E5 Tier 10 heavy tank. I am, of course, in the E4 once again. Ike is going to stick to Quickie Baby like a glue, because while the Foch 155 is obviously very, very dangerous and has a massive burst damage output, once it's reloading, it's incredibly vulnerable. So Ike in the heavy tank is going to stick together with Quickie Baby and watch him while he's reloading. What we're planning to do here is head down to the south. And instead of all going the same direction, because that would be a bit of overkill, instead we're going to split. They're going to go high, I'm going to go low. So we're not getting in each other's way trying to shoot at the same targets, but we're still close enough together to be able to mutually support each other if we need it. And I am getting kind of nervous as I come down here, mostly alone. The only thing coming with me is an IS-3. But I've got Quickie Baby and Ike above me. If I need help, I can always call for it. I also notice that there's a Waffenträger Panzer IV on the ridgeline behind me. Unfortunately, once I go around this corner, he can no longer shoot at what's in front of me. What he can do, however, is keep an eye around that hill on my right and protect me from getting outflanked. And that's what I'm counting on him to do. Because now there's a 110 over there, and there's a T30, and oh shit, back up, back up, back up. The Jagdpanzer E100, the mighty Jägeroo. And now there's a KV4 as well. So I am counting on that Waffenträger to watch the right flank. There he is. And stop me from being outflanked by the 110 and the KV4. Uh-oh. You really don't want to be trading shots with a Jagdpanzer E100 in any tank. And I can't see the penetration hole, but it looked like he smacked me right into that completely inadequate turret cheek armour. And I cannot face off against a T30 and a Jagdpanzer E100, especially when I'm about to be outflanked by a 110 and a KV4 at any second. And this is why I'm pulling back, and there they are. IS-3 helps me out. Set him on fire. He fires. I could have used that not happening, so I've taken damage from the 110. The IS-3 again. Oh crap, now here comes the Jägeroo. Come on, Waffenträger. It looks like the Waffenträger's moved. And I'm yelling for help from Quickie Baby, and he doesn't let me down. I put a shot into the Jägeroo. Quickie Baby finishes him off. He's asking me if I'm alright handling the KV4 by myself. I'm looking back to see if I'm going to get any kind of support from the Waffenträger. Now the T30's been taken out, I'm confident I can get this guy. He's just fired. So I really don't have to worry about shitty gun depression. I can take my time with this shot and just plant it right through the front of the KV4. 295mm of penetration makes a very, very compelling argument. So what appeared to happen there, I was counting on some long-range support fire from the Waffenträger 4 to keep my right flank secure, but it looked like he had moved out of position when he realised he was unable to effectively engage the T30 and the Jagdpanzer E100. That meant that the IS-3 who was with me put up a fantastic job of keeping my flank defended against the KV4 and the 110. The Waffenträger driver did eventually realise that he wasn't going to get shots at the Jägeroo, and the 110 and the KV4 were his priority targets, and he did put some fire into the KV4 eventually. But it was Quickie Baby who really saved my ass there. As that Jägeroo came around the corner, I mean, I put a shot into him, but I was never going to kill him. I saw my life flashing in front of my eyes as that gun swiveled towards me, and Quickie Baby just straight over the top, Foch 155, bang. Saved my ass. So I'm still in the game. And this is one of the few occasions where I am grateful to be in an E4 rather than an E3, because there's nothing left to kill down at the southern end of the map, and an E3, while it is significantly faster than a T95, it is not a fast machine by any stretch of the imagination. It would still be struggling up this hill. And while the E4 isn't a fast machine either, it's definitely got the edge in mobility over the non-turreted American tank destroyer line. And I am at least able to keep pace with this IS-3, even though he's starting to pull ahead of me now. Quickie Baby and Ike, of course, in a Foch 155 and a T110E4, they're miles ahead of me. And doing more damage as I'm struggling to catch up. Bunch of targets up there that Quickie Baby and Ike are engaging. The majority of what's remaining on the enemy team are all up there in front of them. I have no shots at these guys, and it's going to take me far too long to get all the way around and up and then around again into a position where I can start pointing the gun at them. Much better chance of scoring more damage if instead I go after that VK4502B. I don't have to climb up any hills and fight my way around half a dozen friendly tanks in order to get my gun pointed at him. Oh, that was the Borsig. But none of these guys above me are in a position to shoot me, and I'm not in a position to shoot any of them, so we're going to go for the 4502. He still has a lot of health, and lots of health means I can do lots and lots of damage, and lots of damage means points and prizes. So we're going to close in on this guy. That IS-3 is still with me. He's been a very, very valuable teammate, and I am going to shamelessly exploit his remaining health pool in a moment. I have been spotted, back right up, and yes, I'm letting the IS-3 take the hit for me. I'm a bad teammate. But hey, that's what your teammates are there for. And I've reloaded, and it's a dodgy as hell shot. but it's good enough. And do you see that? I'd like to think the IS-3 actually came out in order to protect me. Although he's probably just trying to mangle his armour. But we can dream. And Ike gets his third kill. So there's another Brothers in Arms. And that is easily, to date, the best game I have played in the T110E4. And yet, only good enough for a second class mastery badge. So while I do not think this is a very good machine, people are clearly doing very, very well in it. That was just the second class mastery game. It wasn't even first class. And it's one of those few occasions where I actually do more damage than anybody else on the team, which is not easy to do when you're platooned up with Ike and Quickie Baby. I need to give a shout out, by the way, to that IS-3 driver. There he is, Chuchin. Fantastic teammate. Stuck with me through thick and thin, watched my back, guarded my flank, and I rewarded him by shamelessly letting him take hits for me. I am very, very sorry, but you had the health, I didn't. If you're watching this video, you have my eternal gratitude and my apologies. But I couldn't have done that without you there, so thank you very much indeed. And I badly needed this result, because prior to this game I was very rapidly coming to a very, very poor opinion of the T110E4. And it was nice to know that I could do well in this machine, because I had all but written it off. And I do stand by 100% everything that I have said about the E4 throughout the course of this review. It is not a good machine. I'm sure there are people out there who disagree with me, but they're wrong. The E4 used to be a really, really good machine. It isn't anymore. It's not terrible. It's not even bad. There's just nothing good about it anymore. And it is certainly possible to do well in this machine, but that doesn't mean you're driving a good tank. It means you're a good tank driver, and there's a world of difference in the fine print. So, that was the T110E4 American turreted Tier 10 tank destroyer. I hope you found the video educational, or informative, or at the very least, entertaining. And as always, take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.